before I became a CEO and you looked at some of these people in these roles, you thought, well, you kind of have to be a little bit cold and detached and decisive. And, you operate like maybe in a different way than you did, even in your prior role as a senior leader in a company. And I've been happy to find that it's not the case. I tend to be like warm and accessible and, I am who I am.
This is Inspiring Women. I'm Lori McGraw. I'm speaking today with Susan Tousi. She is the CEO of Delphi Diagnostics. And now, Susan, your career, it's spanned decades. You've done trailblazing work at the intersection of science and leadership. You've been the chief commercial officer of Illumina. You're a member of the National Academy of Engineering. That's kind of incredible. And you are now at Delphi Diagnostics, which is cutting edge blood-based cancer detection tools using AI and a whole lot of things that I'd never heard of before. Susan, thank you for being on Inspiring Women.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure, Lori.
Well, Susan, let's get started. And maybe I want to hear sort of like how you got here with your engineering background and business background and research background. But I'd actually like to learn a little bit about Delphi. Would you mind telling us what the company does?
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing to talk about. So, Delphi Diagnostics, we develop blood-based testing for the detection of cancer at its earliest stages. So we have very high sensitivity at picking up cancer at stage 1. It is through a simple blood draw. And so we can detect cancer at the earliest stages from the less, invasive way. And that is a simple blood draw that can happen at your primary care as part of your routine physical. And we use a technology that's looking deep into the insights that come from your blood. And that is if there's a tumor present, that it is shedding into the bloodstream, and we can pick that up. And, we do that in a super cost effective way, which I'm happy to talk about, but it makes the test very accessible. And really the power is behind, as you say, the AI and the machine learning that's gone into developing these algorithms that pick up this cancer signal. And so through the advent of these technologies, we're able to offer this incredibly accessible test, low cost. Anywhere you can have blood drawn, you can get tested. And that's what we're all about. And
I'm super interested in the advancements that are happening in the space of cancer and detection, as well as just the use of AI. But Susan, before we talk about that, you've been CEO of Delphi Diagnostics for a bit over a year, but your background spans decades of engineering and research, Hewlett-Packard and Kodak and Illumina from the business side, scaling businesses. And I know all of those things were very important in terms of what Delphi needed at the time that you became CEO last year. Can you give us a little bit of the bio sketch? And so, first of all, there aren't enough women in engineering. You're one of them, and you're leading in that area. Give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I mean, I come from a long line of medical doctors, and almost, everyone in my family, my father was a physician. And so I was always inspired by the opportunity in human health, but I myself was kind of driven by things that move fast in terms of technology. And I saw, the innovations in the kind of computer age, and I wanted to be part of that. To me, healthcare was moving fairly slowly in terms of kind of technology adoption. So I started my career in what I thought was, kind of the fast moving advancement of science and technology, which is why I went to engineering. And I worked on some of the most complex problems, had an opportunity to build digital imaging and printing and, people's ability to share, photos and memories.
And I remember how fast that industry changed. It was like one day we woke up and we went from the Polaroid camera to all of a sudden, cameras they're not exactly a thing of the past, but they kind of are with our phones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw the digitization of all of that. I was on the forefront of it. I developed a lot of the technologies behind it. And it was, after doing decades of this and really successfully kind of building a business, I went from, learning how to be an engineer to then, applying that to a number of super innovative products that were on the cutting edge at HP. And then at Kodak, I got the opportunity to kind of develop those technologies in a company that had such a longstanding history of
Right.
preserving people's memories and sharing. And I got the opportunity to run a business around it. So I developed the technologies, and I stepped in as general manager of a business that we developed into a multi-$100 million kind of profitable business within the company, on the forefront of digitizing everything about
Mm-hmm.
photography. And at about that time in my career, I really kind of got the burning desire to do something beyond, helping people share images and, all the
Yep.
consumer space things, which I learned a lot from. And it was, absolutely rewarding to me. But when I came across Illumina and, I had the reach out from them and a number of other companies in the biotech, healthcare, life sciences space broadly, I was excited about what was going on. Finally, I felt like the technologies behind medicine were advancing at a pace that was starting to keep up with, the rest of the
Right.
technology world. And kind of the first human genome that was sequenced was, now starting to take legs, and people were excited about, and how do we foresee this
Mm-hmm.
impacting the future of health? And Illumina was a company on the kind of forefront of that. And really with a desire, and, as they saw me as a fit for this next stage of the company, how do we really reduce this to practice? How do we bring down the cost of sequencing, improve the quality, really make it accessible to what will ultimately become patient testing? And so I had the opportunity to be part of that, first as leading all of product development for the company, the biggest R&D group. And then as chief commercial officer, not only did we, significantly bring down the cost of sequencing from what was more than, $100,000 to sequence a human genome to closer to $100, through the technologies that the team and I helped to develop. And then as chief commercial officer, got to take that out to 155 countries around the world to
Yeah.
make this technology accessible. And what was most exciting to me was that it was starting to become, routine in the practice of many tests that were starting to take off in medicine. And that, was finally kind of the, promise for me of, what this technology could do.
Another part of the just sort of research and development in the space of biotech that's really expensive and really long is clinical trials.
Yeah.
And so I understand only like this much about what Delphi does, but I know that one of the areas that, in addition to cancer detection through the liquid biopsy of blood, that you're also doing work in clinical trials to speed that process up. So maybe you can go into a little bit about what are the technology advances that you're focused on now? I think that Delphi is at an early stage of these detection tools. So maybe where are you in the cycle? There's been a lot of amazing funding. I was looking at your investor list. These are some heavy hitters. So just give us a sense of how the technology and what it's actually impacting in the space of early cancer detection.
Yeah, our technology is based on the genomics and multiomics technology that I helped to create when I was at Illumina. And
Yep.
now, reducing it to practice. And in our technology, we take full advantage of these advances, and we
Mm-hmm.
use the maximum amount of information that's coming from a blood draw. So we're looking at, as I mentioned, kind of the tumor cells that have been shed off from the earliest stages of cancer in that
Yep.
blood. We do whole genome sequencing of it. And now, with the cost reduced and the accuracy of that, we do whole genome sequencing of that. From that, we detect a cancer signal, and we've applied that, and we do it, very fast. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like an automated, very fast process. We've applied it to the problem of lung cancer initially. We've demonstrated in many other cancers, but lung cancer is a huge, care gap in our system today.
Mm-hmm.
It's the number one cancer killer. 1 in 5 cancer deaths is from lung cancer. Takes more lives per year in our country than breast, colorectal, and cervical cancer combined. And
Really?
yet 94% of people who should be screened for lung cancer don't get screened.
And
If
these
you're
are
lung
not just smokers, right? These are many more people than smokers.
Initially starting with the smoking population, which is a population of 20 million people who should be getting tested, and only
Mm-hmm.
6% of them do.
Mm-hmm.
We have the intention to extend it beyond that, because we know that the never smokers who are developing lung cancer are increasing as a rate, and our test has no downside. I mean, it's very non-invasive. It's just a blood draw. It's not like
Right.
radiation based. So we want to address everyone who has a potential for lung cancer, starting with the intended use population of former smokers.
Is the
20
test
million patients.
available now, or are you still in the research and development phase?
We launched the test. We launched the test actively last year, and it's available in a number of health systems. We have 8 major partners, including across the country. In Pennsylvania, it's Allegheny Health Network. In
Yep.
Illinois, it's OSF, Beth Israel Lahey in Boston, Indigenous
And then
PAC.
are you able to take that new process for scaling? Because this is I mean, first of all, it sounds amazing. That's like congratulations on that. And now are you able to take that and apply it to other detection tests?
Yeah, absolutely. We've demonstrated results in ovarian cancer, liver cancer, other major classes of cancer, even multi-cancer. We also have launched this is for research use and for pharma partnerships, but we run a therapy monitoring product as well, based on the same core technology with different AI and algorithms applied, looking for the response to therapies much earlier than they would be found in imaging
So,
tests.
Susan, how are you thinking about this? Because I'm just like in terms of your career trajectory, sort of like taking everything that was, doing patents and other things in the area of photos, changing an industry in terms of how we share images, now bringing AI and technology and tools into detection for cancers. What are you optimistic that that these tools will speed up? And then also, will they be affordable for the people who need them? Because there's often an access issue.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic, and I think that this is the future. And for patients who don't live near a major cancer center or have access to like the latest, most expensive infrastructure kind of technologies, if you can get a blood drawn, you can get
Yep.
our test. And I think that is the future. And in terms of accessibility, that is like at the core of what we have worked on. We've
Hmm.
developed a technology where the heavy lifting is in the AI and the algorithms, where the actual what we do with the blood and the kind of wet lab process is as simple as it can be, because
Yep.
we're trying to take the entirety of from that blood. So we are, I think that has been our focus. We think these tests should be in the few hundreds of dollars, easily covered by the healthcare system, available to patients without copay. And that is the future. I think everyone's cancer should be caught early. It should be an annual process. And we're on the precipice of that. And we're, one of the companies really leading the way.
That is amazing. Like that is so exciting to hear, and so it's just that the innovation that you're bringing, that it can be accessible, affordable to the many, many millions of people who need that. I'm just like so happy to hear you thinking about it that type of way. Susan, this is Inspiring Women, and you've been in the chair of CEO of this company for a year and a half. And so as that CEO leader, you're one of few women CEOs in the space of biotech. What's it like? Are you finding yourself as one of few, or are you finding yourself as that really doesn't matter at all based on what you're working on?
Well, there are a growing number of women in the industry and growing number of women in leadership positions. I have been passionate about, having diversity kind of in our leadership team. I fundamentally believe if you're hiring the best and brightest in the world, that, that is diversely represented in the population. If you do it with, a unbiased filter, that you end up with diversity. And I think that shows up in our company in spades. And our chief technology officer is a woman. She's the best and brightest, for the job.
I just
And
saw her recognized as one of the most influential women in that space in the Bay Area. So congratulations on that as
yeah,
well.
she's fantastic. And I learn from, other women like her every day. I think, in terms of like there being an old boys club and, there's some of that in every industry. I've had the pleasure of working with men and women who, we've developed a relationship and trust and, kind of, a collaboration together. People I worked with in leadership roles in the C-suite of Illumina have gone on to run companies, some of them competitive to ours. When I see them, we greet each other in a very friendly
Yeah.
way. I work with them again and, in a moment, I think, it's reciprocal. So I think, when there is, when it's about like making a difference in human lives, and we have people who are really driven by the same North Star and the same mission, we need men and women, to solve those problems. And I hope that women aren't too shy to, really break in. I mean, this is an industry that benefits from a lot of what women bring to the table, which is,
Yes.
passion, dedication, determination. These are not easy industries to make a difference in, and you have to have a long-term perspective. And, and I think, that really suits women in leadership roles.
Certainly. But being a woman as a leader and being CEO of a company like yours are not the same thing. So a year plus in, Susan, what have you learned about being a CEO? That's a big leap to make, an important leap to make, and you've done it. So what have you learned in a year? How has your leadership style evolved? What decisions are you making today that were, maybe you made differently just a year ago?
Yeah. I think before I became a CEO and, you looked at some of these people in these roles, you thought, well, you kind of have to be a little bit cold and detached and decisive. And, you operate like maybe in a different way than you did, even in your prior role as a senior leader in a company. And I've been happy to find that that's not the case. I tend to be like warm and accessible, and I am who I am. I can be a nerd and get super engaged in the technology. I can be very factual and like looking at business metrics, and I haven't had to change who I am as a person in any way, nor would that be authentic or possible. I think, and at the same time, I think decisiveness is important. It's something that, I think teams don't operate well in ambiguity. You want to have all the information, but sometimes, you have to make it, you can't have analysis paralysis. You need someone who can make a final decision. And so I think I've gotten more determined to, be decisive, clear, give my reasoning for, making a final call on things. But thankfully, I am kind of the same, I have the same level of engagement, passion, drive, warmth. I express myself, and haven't had to, kind of change any of that to be.
What's the hardest thing you've done in the past year? So again, it's a important leap to the CEO seat, and it comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility as well as opportunity in terms of what you can drive with, again, groundbreaking technology that you're doing. What's the hardest decision that you've made, perhaps, that you can share that you're proud of, or maybe you were indecisive about, but then you made it? And I say this not because, for you, but for the so many other women who are, looking at that leap and might be hesitating a bit. It's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it is a lot of responsibility, especially when you're talking about patients and like decisions you're making impacting patients. I think probably the hardest thing, especially since like I love innovation and like I see like opportunity everywhere, is focus. I mean, companies, especially private companies, who have to fundraise for everything we're going to accomplish. I think being focused and determined and like having like a real investment strategy is incredibly important. And so we focused on lung cancer as our first indication. It's a sizable $10 billion market. It's a huge patient population that we're going to be able to impact positively with our tests. We're going to save 5,000 to 10,000 lives a year with penetration of our tests just in the US alone. And so that's a really big, opportunity, both from a societal standpoint and a financial standpoint. But it meant we had to, kind of put a lot of other things in, a second position or a third position. We developed a long-term strategy, a 5-year strategy around our technology, around our products, and that forms the basis of our financial plan. And then I had to hire the team who can do this.
So many women CEOs that I speak to talk about the people decisions as perhaps the most important decisions for strategy execution, the growth mindset that most companies are really going after. And sounds like that is your focus as well. I'd love if you could just like share, advice for others, particularly other women CEOs who are looking to either make that leap to that kind of responsibility, have success, but advice that you've learned or you wish that you had as you made the leap, whatever you'd like to close out with.
Yeah, well, thank you. I would really like to see women inspired to come into this field. Cracking the nut on healthcare and advancing, the improvement of people's healthy lifespan there's like no greater mission, I think. And I think women are absolutely drawn to that. I was drawn into engineering because someone told me that that was the way I could make communities better, make lives better, bring technology to bear. I wasn't drawn to it because because of like the power and like I was going to create like weapons or like, big tech. It was about making a difference. And so I would really recommend to women, if this is something you're passionate about, like go for it. Even if you're coming from a different industry where you need all different skill sets, all different talents. Don't, have a bit of confidence in the things that you've done in the past and your capabilities making a difference. Because I've seen it time and time again. And that we need women at the table. These are
Mhm.
long-term, you talked about clinical trials. I think having the instinct that these things are going to make patient lives different. And we need to have that level of evidence. We need to invest in these things. We need to make sure that the diverse population of patients and clinicians who are going to use our tests have to be represented in the people who develop the tests. And
Mhm.
that diversity makes us better. And so I would inspire women to go for it. I absolutely think that I've seen so many women make a successful impact in the future of medicine and the future of healthcare. And I can't wait to see more of them.
Well, that is, first of all, that's great advice. And as I said, Susan, I'm inspired by what you're doing and what you're bringing to an industry that needs this type of innovation. And I am hoping that you have nothing but amazing success. This has been a fantastic, inspiring women conversation. I've been speaking with Susan Tousi. Susan, thank you so much.
Pleasure, Lori. Thank you so much.